like to start my guitar practice time with a mental warm-up, which is just another way to say that I play whatever I feel like for a few minutes. Sometimes this will be a piece of music or sometimes a chord progression, but often I'll just be randomly noodling. There's nothing wrong with noodling though, because sometimes it's necessary to play aimlessly while getting in the right mindset to play with intentionality. Sometimes, however, my mental warm-up will be more directed, often with the help of a metronome. With the metronome set very slow, I'll practice subdividing that slow pulse, and then I'll move the click to different places in the bar. It's especially useful to practice with the click on beats 2 and 4. Step 2 is the technical warm-up. In the technical warm-up, a metronome is mandatory. This is where I set musicality aside for a second and think about precision. Most of the time, I'll play a 2-octave chromatic scale, and I'll often follow it up with fingering patterns up and down the strings in one position and some precision picking. This is the part where I focus the most on rhythm, so when I'm in a chordy mood, I'll sometimes play shifting accents on one chord. Sometimes, though, it might be necessary to take a step back from the more difficult technical exercises and just hone in on one skill, like lining up a picking pattern with the metronome and various time signatures. Whatever I choose to do in the technical warm-up, if I can't play it perfectly, I slow it down or I simplify it. If you're trying to build technique, there is no room for playing those exercises sloppy. Next up is scales and arpeggios, and in this section there's a choice to be made. Do you practice broad or practice deep? I try to switch it up every time. Practicing broad means playing as many scales, arpeggios, and fingerings as possible. For example, playing every mode of the G major scale all the way up and down the neck using the cage system, and then playing all of those shapes as 7th chord arpeggios. Sometimes I'll go up one scale position and down the next, ascending up the neck rapidly. Other times, though, I'll practice deep instead, meaning one shape for the entire day. I'll pick one scale, one position, and play every scale pattern and arpeggio that I know in that one shape without any shifting. If practicing broad means seeing how many scales I can cram into one practice session, practicing deep means seeing how much mileage I can get out of just one shape. And when you're playing real music, knowing a single position deeply is much more useful than knowing a lot of positions just a little bit. The real trick, of course, is knowing every position that deeply. Now that my hands are certainly warmed up by now, it is time for chords. This is another section where rhythm is critical, but I won't always use a metronome here. You absolutely should practice playing chord progressions with a metronome, but it's also important to keep a pulse by yourself when you're playing rhythm. The goal here is to get smooth transitions between chords without interrupting the groove. Lately in this portion of my practice, I've been working on playing a walking bass line along with chords. After that, I'll move on to music reading. This could be sight reading melodies, playing chords off a chord chart, or even more technical exercises out of a book. As long as there's some form of notation in front of me that I'm reading, I say it counts. A lot of the time, I'll be choosing to sight read a jazz standard, playing the melody with a backing track and playing the chords after, then I'll improvise a solo over unfamiliar chord changes. On the other end of the spectrum, though, I could just pull out a chord sheet from a pop song and strum along, which is just as important of a skill to work on. And remember, the easier something is, the more important it is to be able to nail it. If you can't play the easy stuff well, good luck trying to play the hard things any better. The last major section before things start to wrap up is repertoire, or playing the songs I already know. Most of my improvisation practice happens here, as well as memorizing new music after I've already played it a few times in music reading. This could also mean jamming along with songs I like on Spotify, or learning new songs by ear. Playing songs is the payoff for all the work on technical exercises, scales, chords, and music reading. I could spend hours playing through my guitar songs playlist on Spotify, but to get to that point you have to put in all the work to make that possible. Now of course, normally I don't spend hours every day playing songs, but every time I practice I try to play a couple at least, because songs are sort of the point of this whole music thing in the first place. At this point, sometimes I play songs until I'm ready to put the guitar up, but other times I'll wrap up the practice session with one of my 50 random things, a list of prompts that I pick something from at random to end my practice session. Some choice examples include number 4, note identification exercises, number 20, targeting chord tones on giant steps, number 27, working on a quality tone with a pick or fingers, and number 49, connecting solfege syllables to scale shapes. These are all specific enough to give me a clear path, but vague enough that I can choose my own approach to the task. And if I don't like what I get, I can pick another prompt or just read the list and pick something that seems interesting instead of choosing randomly. Finally, I think one of the most important things to know about practicing music is that you need a plan, but you also need to be prepared to deviate from that plan if you need to. I've been using the same basic structure for my practice sessions for about 3 years now, but every day is different, and sometimes I change up the order, skip sections entirely, or throw out the plan altogether and do something different. But the plan is still there. The point of the practice plan isn't to follow it religiously, but instead to have ready whenever I don't know what to do. So I won't say this is the objectively best practice routine for everyone, or even the best possible one for me, but it's a plan and I believe in it. And if you want to be a musician, you need to have a plan you can believe in too, wherever it comes from.